Hey, this is Tarence Lauchié, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to this podcast, The Growth Exchange. This podcast was designed to curate conversation, dialogue, and monologue around all things growth. I believe that everything living has the potential to grow into its fullest and most maximal potential. So let's grow. Hey, welcome back to another edition of The Growth Exchange. I'm Dr. Tarence Lauchié, and I'm glad you are here. Remember, this podcast was designed to curate conversations, dialogues, monologues all around growth. And that would be personal growth, spiritual growth, growth in every area of our lives. I'm a firm believer that anything living has the potential to grow, and we're going to maximize that potential. So let's grow. Today, the guest that I have with me is a good friend, and we were talking off air, laughing and joking and having a good time, and we'll just continue that conversation. I'm honored to have you with me today, and that is none other than Dr. James C. Stokes, the Dr. James C. Stokes.
Man, it's good to be here.
Notice I put the C in there because
Yes,
I don't want them to confuse you with anybody else.
Absolutely.
Welcome, man.
Thank you. Hey, when you call, I got to come.
Hey, that's what I would like to think, but that's not always the case. Some people are like, yeah, I'll get back to you. But no, I'm honored because when we talk about growth, and if I talk from my own personal experience,
Yep.
you were very influential in one of my most recent life accomplishments, and that was completing the doctoral program at a local university.
Yep.
I guess we could send a shout out to Cornerstone University, but because you paved the way, you were my John the Baptist.
Okay. All right.
You were the voice crying in the wilderness, and you went ahead and you encouraged me. So
Yeah.
I want to say thank you publicly for that. Great feat. It took me 6 years, almost 7 years to do what you completed in 3, was it? You did 3 or 4?
4.
4 years.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about your accomplishments
Okay.
and about your growth, just your take on growth. We'll start with that. What's your perspective when we start speaking about personal growth and development? Just a broad brush philosophical statement, and we'll just dissect that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not growing, you're stagnant.
Right.
And I was always told stagnant waters begins to stink after a while.
True.
Growth is essential in every area of our life. Personal growth, occupational growth, anything that you're connected with, it's got to continue to move forward. And so, I think it's important. I think it's mandatory that we search areas where we are lacking, search areas where we make personal assessments in our personal life, our ministry, our marriage, and see areas where it needs growth, and we need to take those efforts. When we were coming up, when we were teenagers, growing into teenage years, your knees start hurting for no reason at all, and elbows hurting. You're like, my knee hurts. She said, "Honey, I'm growing pains."
Yep, growing pains.
And
It happens again later in life too. Maybe you're growing in the reverse direction. Yeah. From
We start
16 to
growing-
60, you're
we
like,
start
ouch.
growing out.
Exactly.
Instead of growing up, we're growing out.
Exactly.
But we experience those growing pains because they're challenges. We
Yeah.
can get stagnant in life, and the wonderful thing is Jesus said this. He said, "Blessed are they who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled." And we think that the blessing is in the filling, but the blessing is in the continual hunger and
thirsting,
thirst
yeah.
after righteousness.
Exactly.
So it is with growth. When you have a desire to do better and want to be more, that's what a real blessing is.
Absolutely.
Not so much in accomplishments; those come within themselves. But just the desire, I got to do more.
Yeah.
I can do more.
Well, you sold me on it when we were talking about the doctoral program that you were already in, and I was approaching that. You inspired me with a couple of things. You said, I said, I might be too old. He said, well, how to finish this program? He said, well, how old are you going to be if you don't? It's like, well, that's a philosophy. I guess I should.
Right.
But one of the things that has stood out to me about you from your transition from your secular work to ministry full time,
Yep.
pastoring the church as well, you left a paper manufacturing company
Yep.
years ago. I think we
Yep.
talked the week that they downsized.
Not far from here either.
Exactly. We talked that week. I did some training for them, for
Yep.
that company.
Yep.
And you said, yeah, they let me go. I say, what? You said, well, they downsized or they eliminated.
They closed down the plant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was an organizational decision, corporate decision, and they said it just like this. They called everybody in. They said, effective immediately today, we're shutting down operations in this plant. There's nothing anybody done wrong. And we circulating a piece of paper. You can sign your name on the time slot. Come in tomorrow and fill out your severance package.
Wow.
Go to your lockers, get your stuff out. Thank you. And they left out.
Have
Just
a
like
nice
that.
life.
Yeah.
Well, that was the beginning of something great for you. I think you talked through what you had planned next. That was the start of me seeing you grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about what you've done since then, from then till now.
Well, let me back up a little because when that day happened, I had been praying. I just got in ministry. I just full-time pastor. I asked God. I said, God, I want 5 years. God, I want to be in full-time ministry 5 years. That was 2001. This happened October 2006, October 30, 2006, which was 5 years, 1 month to the date I prayed that prayer.
So God was like, "Oh, you want out?
Yeah.
I'll get you out there."
Yeah, and then so once it happened, I was like, "This is for real. I ain't got no job."
Well, you did almost sound like you had a plan, though. Even
did.
when because I was like, "My condolences on the journey." Like, that's not a problem. God got something for me,
Man.
But you've been a pioneer in a lot of different ways of our generation in leading out to just be bold enough to pursue the pastorate, but pursue even your role as a professor, as a higher educator.
Yeah.
You've done a lot since, that departure from your secular manufacturing job
Yeah.
in leadership,
Yeah.
which means that you took those same skill sets
Yeah.
and you began to apply them. In fact, your dissertation is on leadership.
Yeah.
So it's a lot out here on the table now. Let's just talk about all those things. Man.
Yeah. So I knew I knew where I wanted to go. I always had a desire to be a teacher. I always dreamed that I always saw myself in front of a classroom as an educator. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I knew there was a roadmap. I knew there was a pattern, but I didn't know which way I was going to take. So I knew I had to go back to school after about almost 22 years.
Wow.
After 22 years, I knew I had to go back to school and get some kind of degree, to fortify what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So actually, honestly, man, I tell her this all the time, but my wife was my inspiration.
Right.
Because
right.
she was
Now,
already
she's in the medical field.
She was already in school pursuing more degrees and and she's
Showing you
boning
up.
up. Yeah,
She was
boning
showing
up
you
her
up.
education and everything. I was like, and she was still working full time in the dentist field and going to school. I was like, if she can do this, I can do this.
Yeah.
So I went back to school, decided what area expertise I wanted to go in. I went into business, got a degree, got my bachelor's in business administration.
Right.
And then from there, I got a master's in ministry leadership. And then I thought I was done, but they was like, no, we got you on the doctoral track. There's a doctoral program coming, and we want you in it. I was like, okay.
You were in that first class, that first graduating
Yes.
class.
I was actually the first African-American male to graduate.
I knew he was going to make Black History. I knew it. And this is February,
This
so
is Black History Month.
congratulations. He got that name right.
And I was the first
James C. Stokes,
male,
the first black male.
to graduate from that EDD program.
Wow.
They didn't acknowledge it though, but
You were
that's
the
all right.
first, and I might be the last. Who knows? It was a tough program. It was not easy. It wasn't one of those, on the back of a magazine type of degrees.
Oh, no.
There was a lot of rigor, and there was a lot of professional acumen that was gained, and some lessons, life lessons.
But check this out. I got in the program, and I honestly didn't know the difference between qualitative and quantitative research.
Right.
I didn't know. I didn't speak the King's language.
Sure.
All I know is if one man can do it, I can do it.
Right.
And so I jumped in it, man.
You said the same thing about your wife and her getting her degrees too. So in other words, in order to provoke you, all I got to do is do something. And he said, if he can do it, I can do it, right?
I mean, I just believe in myself.
Yeah.
I just believe that with God, all things are possible.
Sure.
And I wanted that. Not only did I want that for where I was going, but I wanted it for me. I wanted to accomplish something different.
Well, there's
in
even
my
scripture for that. It says, don't cast away your confidence, which has great recompense of reward, which means that the work that he started in you, that seed or that inkling to accomplish, God will see it through if you get up and do the work.
Yeah.
So you went from being downsized to deciding to get your degrees, going to school, graduating, and now you're teaching.
Yes.
And you got a couple of different teaching posts,
Yes.
both in secondary education
Yes.
as well as
Yes.
high school, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So the day I graduated, one of the professors came to me with my doctorate degree. One of the professors came to me and said, we got a class for you. We think you'll be good for.
Wow.
I was like, okay, cool. And
God was
so
just ordering those steps,
yeah,
right?
but let me back up a little because before that, I had been trying to get employed at that school,
Yeah.
and I was too qualified for this, overqualified for this. I'm like, how can
Right.
you be overqualified for this and that? But I didn't know exactly. I was just trying to get my foot in the door, not as not just a student, but I was trying to get in as somebody who had some kind of
Yeah.
juice around there.
Yeah, you had something to say.
And so the day I graduated, they said, we got a class for you we think you'd be good for. Come see me in my office on Monday. And so they told me what it was, and, I signed the contract. He said, oh, by the way, we want you to restructure the class. So we're going to pay you to
redevelop the
redo
curriculum.
all the curriculum in the class. I was like, for real?
Your dream came true,
Yeah. And so I did that. And then so I taught a few classes there. And then after that, a couple years later, another school I had already applied for, but when I applied for them, they were in a hiring freeze.
Okay.
And so out of the blue, I met somebody who was already working there, and this person said, "You know what? If you already put an application, we can pull it and make sure you." I was like, "Okay,"
Nice.
and it was a place I wanted to be from the beginning, and so I'm an adjunct professor at 2 different schools.
Sure. Both Christian schools. Yeah, you can shout out the schools.
Yeah, so I'm at
they can buy advertisement for this podcast, but go ahead.
I'm at Cornerstone and at Grace Christian University.
Yeah.
And then from Grace, I teach a AP class at one of the local high schools.
Right, and that's at North Point.
At North Point High School.
Man, listen, God has opened some great doors for you, and once growth starts, it never stops. And you can quote me on that. Once growth starts, it never stops. And once we recognize the growth patterns, we can learn how to put our strengths behind it, and how to address our areas of development, or SWOT, strengths, opportunities, and threats and weaknesses. Tell us a little bit about. We're going to be taking a break in a minute, but tell us a little bit about your passion for leadership, black male leadership in particular, because I read your dissertation all while I was writing mine. I read yours over and over and over again. I'm just telling it like it is, because it was a great pattern. In fact, there were professors who told me to read your work, and they didn't even know I knew you. And I was like, oh yeah. And I was I said, I think I could do that. They said, you want to see a really good, in fact, my chair for my review committee was one of the first ones that said that yours was a very good example of an excellently written dissertation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was supposed to just be a capstone, but it turned out to be a full doctoral thesis and dissertation combined. And so you mentioned some things about leadership. Talk a little bit about that to bait our listening audience before we take our break.
Okay, so in the black church traditionally, when people build ministries, they traditionally die in those positions.
True.
And I felt like I think that's counterproductive for the ministry. You build it and you stay there until it begins to decline.
Yeah.
And then
both you and the
it's
ministry
dying
die.
off, and then you die in the pulpit.
Yeah.
And the church is traumatized. There's no exit strategy. There's no leadership
Succession
emerging,
plan.
no
Right.
succession plan, no emerging leader, nothing.
Sure.
And so the church has to start from scratch again.
Yeah.
So, in my dissertation, I just outlined why it's necessary for us to have leadership programs. So leadership and leader development and leader development are 2 different things.
Okay.
You can Google leadership development and 10,000 things will come up. Leader development is different because leader development develops the leader.
As opposed to just simply the principles
The
of
principles
leadership
and the
in an
different
organization.
forms of leadership and the different leadership styles.
Yeah.
You can get stuff on that all day. But leader development, so my idea was, how can the church, the black church, develop leaders through mentoring? Okay. through mentoring, and that was my
True
hook.
mentoring,
Yes.
because during the time of your research, the term mentoring was resurfacing through another generation.
Yes.
There's a couple generations under us,
Yeah.
and they were all looking for mentors. They need mentors, and nobody was mentoring us. I think you helped to define what a mentor really is,
Yes.
and that it is an exchange. It's not just a one way. I'm going to dump some stuff on you, and you better take it.
Yeah.
Nor was it lackeys and flunkies, and
Carry my briefcase and
errand boys,
go
running
start
around
the
doing.
car and all of that stuff. That's not really mentoring, because mentoring. I used the leader membership exchange theory. That was my
LMX.
yeah. And so in that, there's a dyad that takes place. There's a dyadic relationship between the mentor and the mentee.
Sure.
The mentor is pouring into the mentee, and the mentee is soaking up all the knowledge, all the wisdom through real life experience.
So instead of me just telling somebody what to do, showing them how, walking them through it, and allowing them to do it alongside of me. We're
Exactly.
gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm gonna ask some questions. We'll play the quick answer game,
Okay.
where I'll shoot some questions as if I were somebody looking to get you to come and speak and do some training for our leadership team. So we're going to take a break in just a minute. You are tuned in and listening to The Growth Exchange with Dr. Tarence Lauchié. My guest today is Dr. James Stokes, and this man is well qualified to help bring us on track and on target for developing leaders from a mentor-mentee perspective, but also with some strong doctoral research behind him. So right after this break, we're going to come back and continue the conversation. Thanks for tuning in. If you're a business or a nonprofit looking to tell your story through powerful video, you've got to check out 630 Visions. They specialize in creating high-quality cinematic content that not only looks amazing, but actually helps you grow your brand and connect with your audience. I've seen their work. It's purposeful, professional, and built around your vision. Visit 630visions.com, that's 630visions.com, to learn more and to see how they can help bring your story to life. Welcome back. You're tuned into another edition of The Growth Exchange with Dr. Tarence Lauchié. We're talking today about growth in the way of goal setting, achieving goals, but also personal development. Specifically, my guest is an expert, and I can say that with true confidence, on leadership development, but personal leadership development primarily, and then, of course, developing others. When we when we took the break, we were just about to talk about your dissertation work in more detail. There was a model, the leader membership exchange model, that was in your research, and you did some in-depth studies. In fact, you had some research participants to answer some questions and some things that helped to reveal the strengths and the weaknesses of current models, but then also to substantiate your model. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, through the leader member exchange theory, we was talking about how that is there's a dyadic relationship between the leader and the mentor and the mentee, where it's real life experience. So it's not do as I say, but it's let me bring you into this meeting. Sit down, don't say anything, but just watch. Bring you into certain situations where you can get a full view of not just a bird's eye view or not secondhand information, but you can actually hear what's being said. You actually see what's going on. And I believe that's real mentorship. Real mentorship doesn't just last 6 months or a year, but real mentorship lasts years down the road. It's from the beginning to the middle to down toward the end of your journey.
To the actual implementation of when that person walks into those roles. You had a similar experience in inheriting the ministry that your father started years ago.
Yeah. He, I born and raised in the church, man. We did everything. My father was the only pastor I've ever had. He's the only pastor I ever know. So, growing up, he was dad. But as I got older, I saw him in a different light.
Sure.
I saw him I was able to experience things, different conversations, different scenarios, traveling with him, going with him, hearing conversations, being in the car with him, and then, I
Hearing
started.
things you weren't supposed to hear.
Exactly.
And had to keep quiet.
And it's funny that as a kid you see the church one way, but once you become an adult and you go behind, or you're in the kitchen, you see how the sausage is made.
Yeah, you realize that it took some grinding for that too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives you a deeper appreciation for what your parents shielded you from,
Sure.
as well as how they how they how they revealed certain things.
Yeah.
They implemented or allowed you to be exposed to certain things incrementally
Sure, at the proper time.
at the right time.
Which really ties into your whole philosophical approach to your research, because this doesn't apply to church only.
No.
This is not limited to a
No.
church setting. That just
No.
happens to be the field of study that you came from
Exactly.
yourself. But I noticed the practicality of you comparing some of the Greenleaf, as well as John Maxwell, and many other authors on the subject of personal leadership development. You talk about transformational versus transactional leadership.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by it, you can tell. All things leadership, all things growth, that's me.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the church or in the secular world, or if your secular job happens to have the Christian influence, like a Christian professor, a professor at
Yeah.
a Christian college, you know.
Yeah.
So you got the best of both worlds there.
Well, Greenleaf talks about he's the father of servant leadership. So I like to think of myself as a servant leader, because a servant leader doesn't just serve. Transactional leaders, all kinds of different leaders, they serve the organization. But servant leaders serve the people who run the organization.
Yeah.
So as pastors and ministers of the gospel, we're supposed to serve the people.
Sure.
And so I like to think of myself as a servant leader. I think most leadership, if not all leadership, should have a hint of servant leadership to
Absolutely.
it, because there's all different transformational leaders, transactional leaders. There's all kinds of leaders out there for different reasons and different causes, for different purposes. But where I am, and what I'm doing, what God has placed in my hands, I feel it's necessary to be a servant leader, to serve the people,
Sure.
to be there for the people, because I always say pastors don't build churches. Pastors build people.
And then
People build the churches. We
Based on
build
community.
marriages and families, and the concept of family and unity. That's what we build. We instill that in people.
Yeah.
They grab a hold to it and say, "We can do this," and they latch hold to the vision of the ministry, and they become that, and they go get other people.
Yeah.
So we're always constantly serving the people, and even in our church, we don't make it about us.
Well, your philosophy, I think, broadens a scope beyond the church, because your servant leadership that you're talking about has been proven. Simon Sinek and many of the others in corporate America have mentioned how important it is for us to comprehend that we're servants as leaders. In fact, the top of the food chain is really the bottom. And when someone is a CEO or somebody is the corporate executive officer of an organization, they are really the chief servant of that
Yes.
organization. And what they offer is their blood, their sweat, and their tears, which justifies their reward. Sometimes people complain about a leader being paid so much more because they have a whole lot more at stake and they have a whole lot more to risk. In your experience of pulling this together, you did your study specifically on church leadership. How does this apply to secular leadership?
It's funny that you today in class we were talking about politics and how politicians are not there to be served, but they are there to serve. It's called public service.
For a reason, right?
Yeah. It's called political service, or in some countries you hear the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Economics,
Finance,
because it's all about, Jesus said, "I didn't come to be served; I come to serve."
Yeah.
So we who are in positions, political positions, or we are even in powerful positions to make a difference in our community, we should see everything that we have, whether it be in the church or in the secular world as ministry. We should treat it as ministry.
And ministry, by definition, does mean to serve.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know that. They think of ministry and it's, a sanctuary, some music, and some weeping, crying, and laying on the altar.
It's finding the hurt and meeting the need of the hurt.
You've done that. Your nonprofits. There are 3 nonprofit organizations that you're a part of. I've been doing my homework and my research, man. But talk about the nonprofit work and your passion behind that, because it goes beyond. I'm really attempting to make sure we paint a full picture beyond the pulpit, because you're a dynamic preacher. You have a great congregation. You inherited some, and you've grown some, of the members of your church, and you got a great wife and family that support you. I think it's important for listeners also to know that we can live beyond the pulpit in addition to our ministerial callings.
Well, you know I'm following your pattern, right? I'm just copying off of you, man.
I follow you, you follow me, we follow each other, right?
I've watched
the Lord
you.
lead, and may the Lord lead us.
I've watched you, man. I watch you. I watch every move you make,
wow.
Man. And
that's a scary thought. You're not the first guest who said that.
There's something to that. I mean, you yourself, you do some phenomenal, dynamic things in the community, and you keep them quiet. You are the best kept secret in the city of Grand Rapids.
Praise
you
the
quietly
Lord.
do stuff.
Wow.
I'm like, why isn't this on the news? Why isn't he doing this? Why isn't it? But you understand the meaning of serve.
Absolutely.
You understand.
Absolutely. And if I get the
about,
glory out of it, it's a short-lived experience.
Yeah.
If God gets the glory out of it, then we can all live a long time.
Exactly. We can all eat when God gets the glory out of it.
Exactly.
But yeah, we started a nonprofit, living in fulfillment every day.
Mm-hmm.
And what we try to do is, our church was a part of, I co-founded a feeding ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a nonprofit for that with some other leaders in the city, some lawyers and bankers and other people, businessmen. And we feed, I think this is our, I want to say almost 20th year.
Wow.
We've been feeding.
Wow.
This last year, we fed about 1,800 families.
Nice.
We're trying to get to 2,000 families a year.
Sure.
Around Christmas, we give out, turkeys and potatoes and, full meal for families. I sit on that board, and then I sit on other boards. But we have a nonprofit where, we're trying to do all of that, not just one time a year, but all around, all
sense.
year round.
Yeah, because everybody feels benevolent around the holidays.
Yeah, everybody budgets for that. So I've scaled back on this once a year around Christmas time, and so we started within our nonprofit, we started a food pantry.
Nice.
Where and it's all grassroots. We don't advertise on Facebook and this because we want to make sure the people who really need it get it. Not that there's not people on Facebook who don't need it, but it's pretty much word of mouth. It's in the community. It's in our area where we minister at.
Another best kept secret.
And we try to minister to people what they need. My wife was just talking the other day. She said, we got to get something else to the pantry. We got to get socks. We got to get, we have, and she's a dental assistant. So we have toothbrushes and toothpaste and floss and items of female hygiene,
personal needs
for men and all of that, so you can minister to the total man, because they don't want to hear what you got to say about Jesus till you can help me in my personal.
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Yeah.
And so we're trying to do that, man. We're just trying to do things where we see people, there's a need. Amen. And we have some kind of influence, how we can sway that back to where people's needs are being met. That's what we try to do. So we do that. I've been trying to get this, before I even did my dissertation, we was talking about this Boys to Men mentoring program.
Right. I was going to say, you mentioned in your dissertation something about developing young men to be prepared to take on leadership as a successionary plan, whether it's their relative or open door. But you just mentioned a word that I got to go back. You said influence. John Maxwell, of course, is just somebody who we've looked up to in our research, says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less.
That's it. It's getting people to do using your influence to get people. I got loud then. I was getting ready to preach.
That's good. You can get excited. Preach. We have a tendency to get excited.
Yeah. It's using your influence to get people to do what the organization needs to be done.
And not necessarily taking the credit. Because if a leader motivates, if you can use that term. I just don't believe that we motivate people. I believe that we inspire people or we create inspirational environments.
You've been in my Bible studies,
I
ain't you?
was reading, I've been checking it out. But think about it. Inspiration is in spirit. It is
Yep.
in you and it exudes. People around you pick up on it. If it's motivation, that's movement or motion, that's temporal and it only goes as far as you can go. But
Exactly.
inspiration is endless and it's a potential to give people what they need in order to give other people what they need, that gives other people what they need just by creating the environment and the space. To me, that's growth.
Can I be a member of your church?
You
Can
can
I
be a member
join?
of my church anytime. But remember, remember, there's a lot of great churches in this city. I always tell people that, you know.
I always tell our people if I'm your only source of motivation, then when I stop motivating you, or if I can motivate you, I can demotivate
Demotivate you, right?
You know, so I don't want to just motivate you. I want to inspire you.
That's true leadership. I
Yeah.
want to make sure that as we begin to wrap up, because this 30 minutes goes by fast. I always invite the good guests back. So
Okay.
you got to come back, okay?
I'll be glad to.
Oh, absolutely. So we can have more conversation around it because personal leadership is one of the most I don't even want to say undermined it as much as we hurt ourselves by not investing in ourselves.
Yes.
If I were a listening audience member and I called in and I said, "Excuse me, Dr. Stokes, can you tell me what I need to do to become a good leader?" What would you say? Notice I changed my voice to be.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, just think how you could help someone that's just on this quest of becoming a better leader.
I would tell them first figure out what are you called to.
Okay.
First figure out what's your passion.
Yeah.
What are you passionate about, and what are you good at, and where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself?
Now that's three things.
Yeah.
That's what are you called to? What are you good at? And where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, because you know, while I was getting my doctoral, the word got out. Yeah, he's getting ready to graduate this. So I started getting phone calls, and I got a call from this organization who wanted to hire me full time, and you'll do stuff national. You'll be flying international, national. You'll be doing this, and you'll be doing conferences, and you'll be going there. I was like, wait a minute.
So that's not what
I said. How many hours is this going? Oh, it's going to be 40+ hours. I was like, no.
That's not
They
what
said,
you're getting.
what do you mean? We haven't even talked about the salary yet. I said, we'll need to.
Yeah.
I said, because I'm not called to that.
Right.
That's not what God called me to. Not maybe 20 or 30 years earlier, I probably would have jumped at the chance
Sure.
to travel and do all of that. I'm not called to that. No, so I know what I'm called to. I'm called to New Life Tabernacle to be the pastor there.
Right.
And so then you got to know what you're passionate about.
But
What's
also,
your passion?
but I was going to say, and from there, you're able to sharpen others on a regular basis. Your dissertation work, along with the example through the nonprofit organizations that you're a part of, you're being modest, but there's actually 3 of them out there with your name on it that actually are flourishing and doing things to make a difference in the entire world, not just denominationally related, not just our church or our we don't call it a persuasion of faith, we're reformation.
Reformation,
Yeah,
yeah.
not just our reformation alone, but you're impacting the world. You were a part of a film recently, and we take these last 2 minutes to talk briefly about that. Leap of Faith,
Yeah.
and it was a reconciliation film
Yeah.
about race, religion, and some other issues in reconciliation. What did you walk away from that project with? What was the plus for that for you?
The plus was that it can happen.
Racial reconciliation.
Reconciliation. It was all about the polarization of the church. Why is the church so polarized on all of these issues? Which, if you watch the film, we never got to all the issues that it promised. But why is the church so polarized? Why are we so divided on all of these issues? And so 12 pastors here in Grand Rapids got together for 18 months and shooting this documentary with 3 separate I want to say break sessions where we got away out of town for 4
Cohort
days.
experiences,
And we chopped up a lot of a whole lot of these topics on 12 pastors from 12 different reformations, men, women, black, white, and try to figure out why are these age-old issues still polarizing the church. And we came up with some takeaways. This can be done, but it's going to take a whole lot more than this.
Sure.
It's going to take hard work. It's going to take dedication. It's going to take a lot of more things, but it can be done. Anything that is learned can be unlearned.
Right.
So any kind of racism or sexism or ageism or
Yeah.
classism that's learned, it can be it can be unlearned.
Yeah.
It's going to take people who's willing to do the work.
Yeah.
So
I think it was a good documentary. At the same time, there were some other issues that crept into it that kind of threw things off
Yeah.
center. I do suggest that people get a chance to take a look at it.
Yeah.
It's called Leap of Faith. It was at movie theaters, but now it can be accessed online. Am I correct?
Yep. Through, I think you got to go through the Colossians form, and I'm not sure if I think they're still looking for a streaming platform.
Okay.
Whether it be Prime or Netflix or Peacock, they're looking for a streaming platform.
Yeah.
But you can go through the Colossians form, and I don't know. You can go through them and
get access to it,
yeah,
get a
have
link.
access to
Yeah, it's worth watching. I appreciate you being bold and representing the kingdom, and then as a strong Black leader in the community, you represent it quite well. The standards of godliness and righteousness, no compromise, but you also enlightened viewers with what it means to stand firm, but also have compassion, because you had this great sense of compassion around the subject. We'll have to pick this up in our other conversation, because I definitely want to give you a chance to spend some more time unraveling that. What would you like to take us out with as far as for our listeners as it relates to leadership development, goal setting, growth, anything?
I think that all of us can be leaders in our own individual way. You don't have to have all of us got platforms.
Sure.
Mine just happened to be a pulpit in the classroom. Yours as well, pulpit and classroom and other areas. But we can be leaders in our own right, in our own way, with our own center of influence. We can do what God has called us to do. God has called us to carry the gospel and further education. Other people's calling can be totally different, but you can be a leader in your own right. You don't need a collar, you don't need a ring, you don't need a chain around your neck to do what God has called you to do. Find that one thing that's burning inside of you. Find that, execute it, sharpen it, manicure it, and then be a leader in your own way. If that's your family, if that's your friends, if that's your neighborhood, if that's a community center down the street, whatever that looks like, be a leader in your own right.
So start there and work your way.
Yeah.
I'm sure people can find your dissertation published online if they would like to read that. It's some good reading. It is. What's next for you? Because we still young, as they would say.
I had somebody ask me that. So when you going back to school, I said, I'm never taking another class. Never.
See, if you see me in school, I'm teaching. I'm doing the teaching.
Exactly. I'm getting paid for it now.
Instead of paying for it.
I'm getting paid to get in the classroom now. I don't know. I've been approached with writing another book. I've been approached with there's some things out there.
We did an entire Bible study around your first book.
Did you?
We did a small group.
Oh man,
it was
that's
good.
why you my friend.
Stuff. It was good stuff.
Boy, good.
that was more than 10. When did you finish that book?
2008.
That was a long time ago.
2008.
Wow.
2008. So I don't know. There's some things in the hopper that I'm contemplating. I'm trying to get some rest. I'm trying to go on vacation.
That's right. You're trying to catch up with yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, the last 10, 15 years, man, things just happen so fast.
And they all been good.
Yeah.
They've been good.
And the Lord is good, man.
Amen.
He's so, I have no complaints.
No, that's right.
The Lord is good, man. And so I got some things in the hopper. I don't know which direction I'm going to go yet, but.
Yeah. Well, maybe when we come back in the next episode, you can tell us about some other accomplishments and achievements. I know your wife is godly proud. I know your daughter's proud. Your whole family and the community, your church members. I'm a shout out for them that they're proud of you.
Thank you, man.
But I'm glad to know you, man. I'm glad that you are here in the kingdom for such a time as this, and we get to share some space as well as some experiences. You inspired me. To do this doctoral thing, and I finished the course and laid it for me as a crown of righteousness. I guess at some point.
We are like very similar.
We have quite a few parallelisms. Yeah.
time, we
We got
started
excellent
pastoring.
wives. We both married up.
We started pastoring the same time.
Right.
You know, man. So you like my brother from another mother, man.
I appreciate that, and I am glad to know you. I got to close this out because we're going over time, but this is a great introductory conversation with none other than James C. Stokes, Dr. James C. Stokes. I'm so excited. He used to call me during the study times and say, "Hey, Doc, how's it going?" And he was the only person I would let call me Doc because I was in the middle of the fight. But I'm glad to have had this experience. For more information, we'll put it in the show notes for you to contact him and talk to him. I know he does some consultation and personal life coaching. So, hey, take advantage of the opportunity to grow. These guests and these conversations are all centered around the growth exchange principle, where we believe that everything living has the potential to maximize its growth potential. So I want you to stay in touch with us, share and like and spread the word that these podcasts are available and that they are out there for your consumption. Thank you again for tuning in. Let's grow. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Growth Exchange. I'm Dr. Tarence Lauchié. It's been a pleasure to have these conversations and dialogues with our guests. If you notice, one thing we all share in common, and that is the ability, the desire, and the potential to grow and maximize our fullest potential. So keep tuning in. Share this with somebody, like it, maybe even invite somebody. And if you'd like to be a guest, contact us with the information that's here and available for you. Let's grow.